Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Entertaining series. Who's Nintendo suing this week and why are they suing them? And I've got a bunch of updates to the Palworld lawsuit because I've been getting a lot of people sending me different articles about how Nintendo could lose even if they win this lawsuit. So I want to get into that, but trust me, Nintendo always has an ace up its sleeve and they're definitely going to be using it here. But before we get too far involved, do me a huge favor down below, hit like and subscribe and ring that notification bell. Definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, I got a Patreon link down below as well. But in previous videos, and if you haven't seen them, you can check the playlist that this video is on. We've gone over all of the different Palworld and Pocket Pair lawsuits for the patent right infringement, how Nintendo believes that Pocket Pair and Palworld are basically taking their overall gameplay aesthetic from Nintendo games that Nintendo has patents on and using them. So basically Palworld and Nintendo or Pokemon are going to be in a fight, and of course we got some fun footage kind of articulate that visually. But the reality is this fight is definitely going to seemingly go the distance. Pocket Pair is not backing down. They are retaining their own lawyers and they have already submitted their evidence as far as what they're going to argue in court, and obviously so has Nintendo. This thing definitely seems like it's going to see the finish line of a court judgment, and both Pocket Pair and Nintendo are prepping up for that fight. And that's kind of exciting, at least to me personally, because Nintendo loves to sue very small companies and individuals that don't have the financial recourse to actually even defend themselves in court. And even if the makers of Yuzu, different ROM sharing sites and streamers that actually showed pre-release games via emulation, they would have definitely lost those court cases, but they never would have actually had the money to fight in the first place. But Nintendo wants to have a lawsuit about throwing a ball in a playfield, something that's been done 100,000 times in games before. They actually took a lawsuit to a company that has the means to defend this all the way to a judgment. And I will tell you later on in the video who I think is going to win based upon the current evidence. But honestly, right off the top, what we've talked about in videos before, Nintendo's claim here is absolutely flimsy because there's basically hundreds upon hundreds of prior art instances that you could basically use in court to show that Nintendo's patent is not novel and should in fact be invalidated. And obviously if the patents are invalidated, then you can't infringe upon something that doesn't exist. That is the basis of Palworld's entire lawsuit defense as far as Nintendo goes. And honestly, I think it's a pretty good defense as well because there are hundreds of instances that you guys love to comment on in the comments that could be basically shown as to say Nintendo should never have been granted these patents in the first place because people have already done them. Otherwise, they also argued that the patents that they're trying to assert are so vague and technologically common that they shouldn't have been granted in the first place either. But the question is, and a lot of people sent me this, is about how Nintendo really might actually end up losing this case even if they win it based upon cost alone. And that's a very interesting concept, and while it might be true, it's also false in the same sentence, but that's going to require a little bit more examination. But this is all over throwing a ball into a playworld, and what it really is, and I can't stress enough, it's Nintendo being upset that another company basically made a game in a genre that Nintendo feels like they air quotes own, that Pokemon style game, and they are succeeding. So Nintendo doesn't really care about winning this for any sort of financial means. They care about winning it so that they can show every other developer that thinks I could compete with Nintendo in a genre they're successful in, that if you succeed in spite of Nintendo, they will use the court system to basically abuse you, spend all of your money defending yourself, and make you afraid of even going towards that genre in the first place. This is just a scare tactic, and Nintendo is using the patent court system in Japan to basically show to everyone, don't fuck around with us or else you're going to find out. And even if Palworld and Pocket Pair have plenty of different defenses for what they're doing here, it is still going to cost them money, and more importantly, it's going to cost them time, and that is always annoying to have to basically stop the work you're doing, change things around in the game, which is common during patent suits, to remove what could be potentially infringing later on if a court decides it is, and just have to basically rework things. But as far as Pocket Pair's defense is concerned, it seems very sound. For every single patent Nintendo is arguing, they have multiple games, multiple mods that show that this was done a long time before Nintendo was granted the patents, and therefore is not novel. It already exists, and the patent should be invalidated. And again, I can't stress enough, that would be the number one defense to take, because if the patents are invalidated, that means Nintendo has no case on any of their other claims. No patent, no infringement, no lawsuit, no judgment for Nintendo. But again, it's one of those things, Nintendo is doing this just to make you afraid of challenging them in the future. And for Nintendo, I'm sure that's money well spent in their opinion, because it's one of those things, Nintendo just wants to strike fear into the heart of any developer that might challenge them, but it's not going to be across the entire industry, because this is basically so broad. Something like Madden could be infringing on Nintendo's own patents because you throw a football into the playfield and you affect the outcome of the odds in front of you. It's one of those things, Nintendo's definitely not going to sue the makers of Madden. This is just for people that they feel have stepped on their toes a little bit. And you guys all sent me these articles talking about the fact that Nintendo could lose money even if they won this court case, because they're only suing for 10 million yen, which is about 67,000 US dollars. And the way the Japanese court system works means they're only going to be able to recoup a certain amount of that even if they win. And basically how this works, and trust me, I did the research, in Japan you're only allowed to recoup so much of your actual lawyer's fees if you are the winner of the case and you are the plaintiff. If you're the defense in this instance, Pocket Pair, you have to basically pay your own way. You're not really going to get anything from Nintendo, at least my understanding of reading this, but all Nintendo would be granted would be a maximum of 10% of the total damages awarded, which at this point in time what they're asking for, $67,000, would be $6,700 that they could get back, making that basically a grand total of just around $75,000, give or take. And obviously Nintendo is going to spend a hell of a lot more suing somebody like Pocket Pair than they are going to actually get back in return, unless they change the overall damage ratio somewhere down the line, which is possible. But what I want you to understand is this isn't what matters to Nintendo. It doesn't matter if they lose money on this, if they can win. Even if they don't win, they are still showing that if we don't like you, we will go after you. So think about that small development studio that has 3-4 employees and can't afford to fight Nintendo and wants to make a game in a similar genre. They're probably not going to do it off the top, because Nintendo has retained TMI Associates, a Japanese law firm, which I've actually heard before in business. I think maybe when I worked at Burton, these people existed and we used them for something over there. I just know that I've heard it and can't remember why. And they are not a cheap law firm, but don't forget, Nintendo basically prints money, and they're going to continue to print money with the Switch too. The games are more expensive, the hardware is being sold at a premium for old hardware. Nintendo is not broke, they're nowhere close to broke, and they will never go broke. They have so much in the bank that they could basically make no money for probably the next 30 or 40 years and still perfectly exist as a company. So the idea that Nintendo could quote unquote lose money on this, yes, on paper that is true, but in reality does not matter whatsoever. Guys, let's take a look at what Nintendo could actually spend of their overall cash on hand. And this is all public information because it's a publicly traded company. Right now Nintendo is worth $98.11 billion, but that's just their market cap. That isn't something that they can actually tap. Their cash on hand, all that fungible assets, the cash in the bank is 14.12 billion US dollars. Yes, with a B, they've got a couple dollars sitting around. So if they spend $1 million on this lawsuit, that's 0.007082159% of their net worth. If you had $100,000 in the bank, that would be $7 to you. So even if Nintendo loses $1 million on this, it's nothing more than a rounding error on their overall financial reports at the end of the year. Because trust me, they are not going to notice that they're missing $1 million, even if they win the case. The same way if you have $100,000 in the bank, you're not going to notice if you spent $7 one day. It really isn't going to affect anything whatsoever, and that's why even if Nintendo loses money, they're buying fear in the hearts of developers, and that's what they really want here. They're just throwing money around to have an explosive fight, and of course again, thanks Pocket Pair for putting up footage like this that totally works within the context of my video. If you haven't actually played Palworld, I've been checking it out a little bit more because I've been talking about it so much in this video series, and it is relatively fun and charming, and definitely one I would recommend. And if you want to give Pocket Pair a couple extra dollars to fight Nintendo, it is a very good way to do it. But the reality is, what Nintendo wants here is just for anyone to think, I shouldn't even try in the first place, because even if Pocket Pair wins this case, they're going to spend a lot of money doing it. And again, I can't stress enough, not every company that's going to develop games has Pocket Pair money. Think of it this way, that two-person development team that has a really good idea, but some of it hinges on something that could be slightly similar to something Nintendo did a long time ago. They might not even make that game in the first place because they know from Nintendo's track record they may get sued and they may end up completely bankrupted. But if this sees a judgment, not a settlement, I think Pocket Pair is going to win this case, and you will see Palworld come out ahead. And in the most ironic situation ever, Nintendo's added anti-arbitration clauses into the end-user license agreement, which means two things. You're not able to sue Nintendo, you have to go through actual arbitration, and you can't join any sort of class action whatsoever. And the irony is not lost on anyone that the company that will sue you for absolutely just breathing the wrong sort of air is going to now prevent you from actually dealing with them in a court of law. It's a very big rules for thee, not for me situation, and it basically is just a result of Nintendo being nervous about the potential class action lawsuit that ended up being dismissed because of a technicality on the Joy-Con drift. Nintendo basically wants to say, we will sue you anytime we want for anything we want if we so damn well feel like it, but if you want to go after us as a consumer and in a consumer class action lawsuit settlement, you've given away your entire right to do so if you actually accept our end user license agreement. That is the biggest amount of hypocrisy ever. It stinks of bullshit. I'm sure you know that too. But as far as everything's going on, Nintendo might lose money, but trust me, they do not care. It doesn't matter to them. See you next time. Bye-bye.